Fox News alert now on a horrific case of child abuse, raising some very serious questions about our child welfare system. Police finding a 10-year-old girl dead and her twin brother critically injured in a truck on the side of a Florida highway. Their father is now charged with murdering his daughter, who he adopted, and trying to kill his own son. We are told that both parents had been investigated repeatedly, but were still allowed to legally adopt these two children. We are also learning that Florida state welfare officers had been warned months ago, 8 months ago at least, of alleged abuse by several sources. Listen to the answer the judge got when she questioned a Department of Child Services investigator in connection with this case earlier this week.
I intended to go on Monday to speak to them.
So we don't do investigations on the weekend? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not allowed to do investigations on the weekend.
Okay.
I'm not about to. David Wilkins, the head of the Florida Department and Children and Family Services, joins me now. David, listen, I want to start by thanking you for coming on. This is a tough day, and you guys are taking a lot of flack. So you're a stand-up guy for coming on the program and speaking directly to the American people. Having said that, I have to ask you, what do you make of that? That woman was at this house on Thursday with allegations of severe abuse going on inside of the house, and nothing was done. This girl was murdered on Monday. Her brother tortured so badly, we're not going to get into the details. How did that happen?
Well, Megan, you know, the facts are still coming out on this case, but, you know, the people of Florida, the people that work in our child welfare agency, and myself, I mean, we're all just personally outraged and personally sorrowed about the tragic events that have happened here in this situation. You know, anytime a child dies, you know, it's a really personal, a heart-wrenching situation, and we're all trying to do the best we can to deal with the situation. What's very important right now is the other 3 children involved in this case are safe, and the investigation has started in this process. But sometimes, you know, sometimes things happen where, despite the efforts of the agency, evil people can still do evil things. And, you know, and that hurts all of us. And we have to learn from this and learn how to continue to improve our operations based on what's happened in this case.
And I realize that, sir, and there's no question that this father, if he did what he's accused of, is an evil man, as is the so-called mother of these adopted children. But I want to ask you, because you released a statement saying, despite the best efforts of this department, it's impossible to prevent evil people from doing evil things. You saw that investigator from Protective Services testifying to the judge. Those are the best efforts?
Well, what I've done is I've ordered a complete investigation on all the facts and situations for this entire case, going all the way back to when the children were originally put in foster care, the licensing and approval of the foster care home itself, and as well as the individual investigations that we've had on this case. And, you know, we will deal with this very quickly and very openly, and come to some conclusions, understanding exactly what happened and what we have to do differently.
Has that woman been suspended? Is that woman overseeing any cases right now whatsoever?
No. Our normal process is when we have situations like this, we put the people on administrative leave, and she would be in that situation as we go through this investigation. Because
the reports were that investigator, pardon me, I don't know her name, that she showed up at the house on Thursday in response to an allegation that these two children, these twins, were being severely abused, and that the children didn't confirm it. So she left.
Right, and she was back on Friday, and we continued the investigation over the weekend. There actually were other investigators involved in the case, and there was an additional visit on Sunday. But, you know, by the time even the first investigation occurred, the father and the 2 twins had left that house. And, you know, they were, well, we really don't know exactly where they were, but they were somewhere in South Florida at the time.
They had left the house on Friday.
They probably left the house before that. We're still learning all the facts through law enforcement, but yes, they were gone at that point.
The problem is, that there had been repeated reports of abuse. Before these two people were allowed to adopt these children, they were foster care parents first, they had two other children, and they wanted to adopt these twins. Why, heaven only knows, but they wanted to adopt them, and there had been at least 3 reports to the abuse hotline at your department prior to their approval as the adoptive parents of these kids. Sir, I mean, how can that happen?
Well, the case is a very complicated case. There's other extenuating circumstances about those individual children that made the case even more complicated.
Well, what could be extenuated that would allow people who had been, repeatedly accused of abuse to adopt a child or two?
Megan, I'm asking the same questions, and that's why I'm down here in Miami today. And that's why we're ordering this review, and we will do this very quickly to try to address those questions that you have and the other questions that we all have about what happened in this entire process.
There were other reports too, sir, that the girl, who authorities now say was murdered by her adoptive father, had been going to school dirty. That the other child had been bruised, that Nubia, the girl, had been acting inappropriately, suffering from extreme hunger, was very thin, was losing hair, was constantly nervous and jittery, and that those allegations did not result in any action against these two so-called parents by your department.
Yes, that is correct.
And your response to that is what, sir? I mean, do you excuse that negligence?
No, I don't excuse it as negligence, and I don't excuse it necessarily as incompetence either. I know there are other facts that we have to completely understand on this situation, and we have to understand sort of what was the thought process that went into those decisions at the time. We have to understand, what was the situation around the parents.
But give me a hypothetical. Give me something that I can understand, because right now I just feel frustration hearing you. There may have been extenuating services. What were the thought processes? You got an abused child. You got a little girl who's acting inappropriately, who's dangerously thin, who's been reportedly abused. You've got an eyewitness account from another child saying that the father is holding these two kids in a bathtub, bound and gagged, and only untying them for food. You've got a history of abuse being reported out of the house even before they were legally allowed to adopt them. How is it? What extenuating circumstances could there be that would justify your department not going in there and immediately yanking those children out of that home?
Well, I believe if the agency knew at the time that the gagging accusation and some of the torture accusations were happening, then they probably would have been.
She knew.
Or they would have.
She knew. That's what was reported to that agent we saw on camera before she went to the house on Thursday, according to the reports.
Right, but remember, the children weren't there when she got there.
Right, but she knew that was the anonymous report to the abuse hotline. I mean, just because the children aren't there, why wasn't heaven and earth moved to find that father, to put on an APB, to try to get him and get those children? Right, and those are some of the questions we have to answer, and answer quickly. Listen, David Wilkins, it's so frustrating. I want our viewers to remember, it was these parents, and I use that term extremely loosely, who are behind these horrific acts, if in fact they are found guilty of them. CPS is in the business of protecting children. But sir, I think it's clear that was not done. That was not done appropriately here. Nonetheless, thank you for coming on, David Wilkins. All the best to you. Thank you. We'll be right back.